and welcome. For all of you who are watching, you're tuned into TMH's Daily English News, and our headlines for today includes Tigray forces making geographical adjustments by withdrawing from the Amhara areas, UN chief deeply concerned about indiscriminate shelling killings civilians in Ethiopia's Tigray region, and Africa has expressed saying Abiy Ahmed's war on Tigray is a genocide passed under the culpable silence by the entirety of the West. As we move on to our main updates for today, Tigray forces make geographical adjustments by withdrawing from the Amhara areas. A statement from the Central Command of the government of Tigray announced that Tigray forces have made geographical adjustments by withdrawing from Amhara regions, and they had entered in the direction of the south. The statement indicated that over the past 3 days, the Tigray army had been implementing this decision that came about as a result of the Tigray forces' own initiative and not developments on the battlefield areas. If this repeatedly destroyed force makes further attempts on this front, it should know that we will in fact re-enter those areas at any moment and in any direction to ensure our survival, it warned in the statement. It has now been over a month since the Ethiopian regime, in an alliance with the Eritrean government and Amhara forces, have rebuffed and repeated peace overtures by the government of Tigray and launched its invasion. The statement noted that in the month of August, these combined forces did everything in their power to control Ma'ala by launching their primary offensive in the direction of the south. Since then, they have used all of Ethiopia's and Eritrea's combined power to broaden the scale and the scope of the invasion by launching attacks in all directions, prompting the people of Tigray to wage a detriment struggle, self-defense in order to ensure their survival as people. The statement said, after successfully defending against the enemy's attacks on the southern front, transitioning into counteroffensives and destroying the enemy's massive force, the Tigray forces were able to control large areas in the Amhara region. It also even added, though the enemy made repeated attempts to take control of this front, it could not bring any change except deepen its defeats and their destruction. The reason we were compelled to enter Amhara after destroying the enemy force presence in this area was not because we wanted to occupy Amhara land, nor was it to turn Amhara land into a battlefield, but in fact to attack the enemy at a time and place of our choosing. We did so to weaken the enemy's power, thereby compelling it to become the negotiating table, as the statement stated. It noted, however, that the enemy has completely rejected any type of dialogue and peaceful options in practice, and it's moving heaven and earth to realize its dreams through force and war. The fantastic click of Abiy Ahmed slavishly taking orders from the totalitarian Isaias Afwerki and handing over Ethiopia's wealth and empowerment to him is working day and night to exterminate the people of Tigray, doing only what it is told to do via their primer. The Central Command of the government of Tigray said it has thus found necessary to make tactical geographical adjustments in order to reliably address the existential danger hovering over its people as a result of a collaborative invasion. U.S. Special Envoy for the Horn of Africa travels to Kenya, South Africa, and Ethiopia. The office of the spokesperson on the U.S. State Department announced that Special Envoy for the Horn of Africa, Mike Hammer, will travel to Kenya, South Africa, and Ethiopia from the dates of October 3rd to the 18th of 2022. The office indicated that the Special Envoy Hammer is returning to the region as part of an ongoing U.S. diplomatic efforts to achieve an immediate cessation of hostilities in the northern region of Ethiopia and support the launch of African Union-led peace talks. In Nairobi, Special Envoy Hammer will meet with Kenyan government officials, international partners, NGOs, and others involved in regional efforts to build peace, facilitate the delivery of humanitarian assistance to those of whom are in need. It also added that following up on the discussion on the situation in northern Ethiopia and the Horn of Africa held in Washington on September 27th during the U.S.-South Africa Working Group, an African Global Issues Special Envoy Hammer will travel to Pretoria to meet with South African government officials to advance efforts in support, once again, of the African Union-led mediation efforts. In Addis Ababa, Special Envoy Hammer will meet with Ethiopian government and African Union officials and he will also meet with UN officials and other partners delivering humanitarian assistance in response to the northern Ethiopian conflict, providing drought relief, as the office stated in their statement. And according to the U.S. Department, Special Envoy Hammer is expected to stress the importance of accountability on all human rights issues, resolving the conflict, and officially achieving a national reconciliation attempt as well. Airstrikes continue in Ethiopia's Tigray region, and this time has killed 5 civilians, according to humanitarian workers and an internal document seen by the Associated Press. An airstrike by the Eritrean force in Ethiopia's northern Tigray region killed at least 5 civilians during a major religious holiday earlier this week, as reviewed and revived the war continues. The airstrike hit the town of Adidaro in northwestern Tigray on Tuesday morning, also injuring 16 civilians and destroying several homes, as the document by a non-governmental organization said. Humanitarian workers in Tigray's capital, Ma'ala, and the region's second largest city, Shura, 25 kilometers from Adidaro, confirmed the deadly attack. One of the Shura workers said fighter jets attacked both Adidaro and Shura almost simultaneously, as the worker said no one in Shura was injured, while some of the injured from Adidaro were brought to Shura for care. All spoke on conditions of anonymity for fear of retaliation. On Friday of last week, an Ethiopian government-run Twitter account said Ethiopia's Air Force conducted the airstrike in Adidaro, taking accountability. In a statement Thursday, Tigray forces accused the Air Force of neighboring Eritrea of striking Adidaro, killing a number of civilians. Eritrean forces are fighting alongside Ethiopia's military in Tigray, and satellite imagery just shared this week show by Maxar Technologies that military buildup inside Eritrea near the border with the Tigray region. Several airstrikes have been reported in Tigray since fighting resumed in August of months-long lull in the fighting as well. In related news, Africa Express reports Abiy Ahmed's war on Tigray is a genocide passed under the culpable silence by the West. In an article published on Africa Express under the title Genocide in Tigray, the shameful public indifference wrote that bullets and shellings are the lesser evil for Tigrayan civilians. It detailed hunger, thirst, lack of medicine, fuel, communication, even confiscation of any currency deposited in the bank, and total shutdown of the banking system, as well as deprivation of salary for 17 months, as some of the outcomes of the systematic siege on the imposed Tigray region by Abiy Ahmed's government. It also indicated deliberate imposition of ignorance through destruction of schools, rape of girls and women, including nuns, emasculation of little boys, burning of crops, slaughtering of livestock, looting, carpeting, bombing of villages and towns as well, and an inability to get seeds and essential goods such as powdered milk for infants, as some of the crimes being used by Abiy Ahmed's regime and its allies as a weapon of genocide. Africa Express reported that Abiy's media tactics consist of gaining time through fake diplomatic meetings, bogus and conflicting declarations, while every day hundreds of innocent people die of hunger, thirst, and even curable diseases. Africa Express wondered how the mere fact that the independent observers and journalists are not allowed free entry into the Tigray region and is not enough to arouse suspicion and question marks over the statements made by Abiy Ahmed and his ambassadors, as well as his representatives around the world. In Tigray, there are only 6 million people to be annihilated, as many as the Jews gassed in the crematory of Europe. When the genocide is over, will the international community organize more hypocritical commentation and commemorations, as Africa Express asked within their article? The EU expresses alarm at the deteriorating of the humanitarian operational environment in northern region of Ethiopia since the resumption of hostilities that began in August of 2022. Commissioner Lenarczyk issued a statement on the humanitarian situation and international humanitarian law in the northern region of Ethiopia. The statement said, EU is also alarmed by tens of thousands of newly displaced people and widespread damage to civilian property and infrastructure, which comes on top of an already dramatic humanitarian context. It added that supply of humanitarian commodities and fuel as well as cash availability are still totally blocked for Tigray and greatly impeded all affected in areas of the Amhara and Afar regions. The statement did reveal that the humanitarian organizations had to suspend their operation, withdraw some staff from conflict-affected areas, and this is a serious blow to the humanitarian operations and to millions of highly vulnerable people within the Tigray region, Afar and Amhara regions included, that depend on humanitarian aid for their survival. The EU called on all belligerents to grant unhindered access to humanitarian organizations so that they can reach all people that are in need in line with the international humanitarian law's principle of impartiality, neutrality, and independence as well. The EU encouraged all parties to immediately end all hostilities and reach a negotiated permanent ceasefire agreement as soon as possible. Meanwhile, WFP Regional Director says virtually no aid access currently in Tigray. According to Michael Dunford, Regional Director for Eastern Africa at the World Food Programme, there is no virtual access, hence no humanitarian support going into Tigray following the resumption of fighting in northern Ethiopia at the end of August. In many ways, we're back to square one, he said, about the nearly 2-year-long conflict during a conversation hosted by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, or also known as CSIS. Millions of people across Ethiopia, including Tigray, Afar, and Amhara regions, are in need of urgent humanitarian assistance. He noted that while the conflict has impacted all of these regionals significantly, the government has imposed specific restrictions on the flow of aid into the Tigray region, which has included blockades on telecommunication and banking services included. He added WFP staff have not been able to leave Tigray, and the United Nations flights humanitarian groups were using into Tigray's capital of Mekelle are also suspended. We've got huge levels of food insecurity. 89% of the population, 5.2 million people, we estimate have limited food capacity, and over 40% of them are in fact acutely food insecure currently. During the CSIS event, Abdullahi Boru, who's the senior advocate for East Africa at Refugees International, said the Ethiopian government has used the slow burn tactic to deny the people food as a tactic of war for 2 years now. While aid groups have been a pragmatic approach and aiming to not only upset the government through the conflict so they could retain access, it's also for the naught, Boru said, and adding that they have shut it down now. He said, what was the use of not pushing the envelope any further? Boru Halaki said the international community has largely left the conflict to play out, and I think for the Ethiopian government they feel insulted. He called for a robust response with diplomacy not taking place behind the scene of depending on special envoys who won't move the needle as much as they need to, he added, as the African Union process is not likely to yield results and it will be almost dead on arrival. Shortages of fertilizer led to poor crop stands in Tigray region despite generally good main rainy seasons as the season approaches. A team of geographers from Mekelle University in Tigray and Ghent University of Belgium have carried out a survey of the crop status on farm plots in Tigray, and according to the survey, only 1/4 of all planted crops had received fertilizer, commonly in the insufficient amounts. For 2022 rain crop season, less than 20% of the required fertilizer did in fact reach the Tigray region, and of the 262 agricultural plots sampled by the survey, 15% of the observed agricultural plots were followed cereals and been planted 3/4 of all of the parcels. The survey found that 71% of the AIF lands were in bad condition, while 76% of the wheat and the barley fields were in good or medium condition. The farmers will harvest their farmlands in the coming months, and the team anticipated that the yields will be nearly as bad as they were in 2021. Observers did indicate that Abiy Ahmed's government and its allies restarted the war on Tigray before harvest season to destroy much of Tigrayans under the siege managed to grow without seeds and fertilizer as well. Our final update for today, the Eritrean Orthodox Church of North America, Europe, and Middle East condemns the war on Tigray. The Eritrean Orthodox Church, the Canonical Archdiocese of North America, Europe, Middle Eastern, and condemned the ongoing war on Tigray and called for peace immediately. It also declared a 7-day prayer and fasting from the 3rd of October, which is today, until the 9th of October to commemorate of all who have lost their lives amongst this conflict. That concludes our news for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bye-bye.